What's happening, everybody? Got a little bit of Z League content for you today. Within the league, we have just released our fourth fan set, titled New NZ4 Colossal Calamity. In this set, there are 30 new cards released to continue to expand the score Dragon Ball Z CCG, and within it comes Hirudegarn. He was not present in the official release of the game, nor was he present in the retro virtual continuation of it either. It was just something they just didn't quite get into. I really like Hirudegarn, and I wanted him to be a part of this experience. So we put our heads together and created an MP that I think is actually really interesting. I've put together a deck using him, using a new mastery from the set, as well as some cards within the set, and I thought it was a great opportunity just to kind of show off what a deck using some of this new NZ4 content might look like. I of course don't think this is perfect or optimized or anything yet, still needs a bunch of testing and whatever, but I think this is a great start. It covers kind of the bases that I want the deck to do, and tweaks to your own desire can be made from there. But let's get into it. Being huge decks, these score deck profiles take a minute, so let's waste no time. So we'll start here. We'll just look at the mastery first. The Black Calamity mastery. Within NZ4, we have named the masteries. This is something that James, the other creator, and myself felt was kind of lacking from the masteries within the score game. They are all named within Panini. They're all named within the GT release of the game, etc. And I think it just brings a little bit more uniqueness to the mastery instead of it just calling it Black NZ4 mastery. I think it's just a little bit cooler and makes them a little more memorable. So we've got a nice picture of Hirudegarn featured here. As you can imagine, this is kind of the first idea, that how Broly is he obviously goes with Saiyan or whatever. This mastery is kind of built when this MP are kind of built together. So this is the obvious deck for him. I think there's a lot of other cool decks he can go into. I don't even think this is the most interesting of the decks, but it's just kind of the newest of them. So getting into what it does, your black style physical and energy combat cards that can stop attacks gain Raise Your Anger 1 level. When you would discard one or more cards from your opponent's hand, or remove cards in their discard pile from the game, you may instead discard the top 3 cards of their life deck. So we've got a mill deck. If you're familiar with Magic, if you're not familiar with Magic, it's just place the top cards of your deck into the discard pile, try to kill them by decking them out. Obviously decks are huge in this game, so there are a lot of times where just straight mill probably won't cut it, but as we know, damage in this game is dealt to your life cards of your deck, so milling plus damage to your deck hopefully gets you through it a little bit faster, and we'll see how that does. You'll notice here too, with it gaining anger off the cards that can stop attacks, that's an important thing to remember too. So if we look at our first level here, we're going to run the 4 levels for Hirudegarn. There is a 5th, and I think that level is really interesting. I, however, don't like it as much for this particular deck. So getting started with the level 1, this is Hirudegarn Dormant. You'll notice his power stages are really, really low. He's just kind of a statue at this point. He's locked away, powerless. But if this card is your main personality, if it's part of your main personality's deck, you can't win by MPPV. Hirudegarn will gain a lot of anger quite quickly. That's sort of built into what he does, as anyone who's seen the movie knows he's just a big angry monster. So he does a lot of gain in anger. So we don't want him to just get to level 4 or 5 in a couple combats and just have the game be over. It's got a power up rating of 1 and a constant combat power each time your opponent performs an attack. Raise your anger 1 level. So he'll start building up some anger pretty quickly as that first combat goes. Your cards that stop attacks, as you know, can also gain you an anger. So you'll get off this level fairly quickly. Which brings us immediately into Hirudegarn Divided, our level 2. You'll notice the power stages on this guy jump quite a bit. He is in B for most of his bracket here, but he's in C for a lot of it. He starts in B for a couple, jumps into C, and then the very last 2 stages he's in D. So he does have a little bit of spread to him. You can get him into a decent bracket for a level 2 and not be too low for the rest of it. He has a parenthetical effect here. When you gain anger, if your anger isn't 0, your MP loses 2 power stages to a minimum of 0. Attacks performed against Hirudegarn gain, if successful, raise your opponent's anger 1 level. So, again, if you've seen the movie, like Goku says, Hirudegarn's weakness is intense emotions drain its energy, and that's why it can be attacked. So we wanted to kind of bake that into like what he does. So as he gets angry, those are your opportunity to strike against him. So there's this little bit of give and take of, do you want it to get more anger, knowing it's going to level, or give it some anger so that it loses stages and makes it easier to hit for a couple of attacks. That's kind of your tug of war against this guy. But each time you gain an anger, you lose 2 stages. That's not great, but hopefully you gain enough anger to level quickly enough that it recoups itself. And then, of course, attacks performed against you, giving you an anger, you're going to jump quite a bit, if successful anyway. His power itself, physical attack doing plus 4 power stages of damage. If successful, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's life deck. Power up rating of 2. So it's just a decent little physical, and if it hits, they take 2 extra damage to their life deck. Starting the mill early, it does have to be a successful. He's only level 2 here. Level 3, we've got Hirudegarn fulfilled. You'll notice here his power stages jump quite a bit. He is in D for almost all of it, but just breaks into E for the top couple of stages there. He has the same parenthetical as the first level, except instead of losing 2 stages, you lose 3. So as he gets bigger, he loses more stages each time he gets angry, but he does level himself a little faster, so it kind of balances himself out there. You'll notice a power up rating of 4. He starts to gain stages pretty quickly here. Physical attack doing 4 life cards of damage, and discard the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck. So if this hits, it's basically 7 life cards. That's awesome. And even if it doesn't, they're still going to mill 3. Which is exactly what we want to be doing with this deck. And finally, we've got level 4, Hirudegarn Transformed. 5.8 brings him up just barely into F at his highest stage. Most of this one, he's in E. He actually goes down to D for the lowest couple here, but D, E, F through most of this level here. This one has the same effect as the last level. You lose 3 power stages. And that's nothing else changes with the parenthetical. However, you'll notice he has 6 for PUR here. That's huge. We're going to hit this level quite quickly in a perfect world, and gaining 6 stages each combat is also awesome. Now, as a power, raise your MP to its highest power stage. This is great because you lose stages a lot with this MP. Then discard the top 4 cards of your opponent's life deck. For the remainder of combat, your successful attacks discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's life deck. So now, as you can see, getting to this level 4, you're going to start really laying on that mill mentality, and hopefully that will start to add up and pile up quite quickly. So that's it for the MP stack and mastery here. In this deck, I'm running North Kai Sensei just to turn off senseis a couple times. To turn off masteries a couple times. There are some arguments for other ones. Even East Kai or whatever, to give yourself a full power up is sort of an option. Goku Sensei wouldn't be bad here either, just to make sure that you keep gaining that anger and your opponent doesn't lower it so you can get to your next stages quicker. But that is completely up to you. First section of the deck here, I want to go over like the combat, non-combat, drill, ball sort of section of things. We've got 2 Dragon Balls in this deck. I'm running 4 and 6 alt Namek balls. Ball 4, discard all of your opponent's allies. While you control this ball, allies and non-combats that would be removed from the game by your opponent's card effects are discarded instead. That doesn't mean much to you. It's just a free way to get rid of all of the allies in play. We want to be hitting our opponent for life cards as much as we can, so if we throw physicals and they move the damage over to allies, that's not good for us. And Namek Ball 6, raise your anger 2, this is good. Discard a non-combat card in play, also good. And while you control this, your opponent can't use their Sensei card. We use North Kai to turn off the mastery, this turns off their Sensei. That's nice. Then, of course, we've got a Vic Drill. This is the only drill we run in the deck because we do level as quickly as we do. But Everyone knows what Victual does. You put it out in play, start of each combat, gain 2 stages, your opponent loses 2 anger. We've got a couple of non-combats. We've got 3 here. We've got Fatherly Advice. Search your deck or discard pile for a combat, physical combat, or energy combat card. Limit 1 per deck. Everyone knows Fatherly Advice. It's staple. And we're black, so we've got 2 black searching techniques. Just a good way to pull out a couple little problematic cards and stuff out of your opponent's deck. As we're going through mill damage and stuff here, the more that we can do to whittle down the contents of their deck, the better. Getting into combat cards, we've got Super Saiyan Effect. Your opponent can't perform physical attacks. We have Android 17 Smirks to discard all of their drills in play. Fine, we're a villain, we know we're going to run that. We're running 2 18 stare downs here. I will not fault anyone for running 3 of this. It obviously makes sense in this deck. However, with as much other stuff as I kind of wanted to fit into the deck, this card is where I ended up making the 3rd cut. We have black negation and 2 Trunks energy spheres. 3 spheres is plenty in most decks. So I just made the 3rd sphere a better one. This is an NZ4 card. Stops the effects of a combat card. Use when needed. If you declare it a Tokuwaza, your opponent shuffles their hand into their deck and draws the same number of cards -1. It's limit 1 per deck and remove from game after use. Just a better sphere. Then in the rest of the combats here, getting into some actual styled stuff. Oh, I guess of course we have our time. Every deck has time. Every deck's got time for time. 3 copies of Black Foreboding Weather. Now this card is a new NZ4 card as well. It is basically just stop a physical or energy attack, gain 4 stages. That's good. A block that gains the stages in an MP that loses stages is good. You're going to notice a theme of that. But this one has a parenthetical effect as well. If you declared a Tokuwaza, when entering combat, you may reveal this card in your hand. If you do, your opponent removes the top 3 cards in their discard pile from the game. It's a nice way to control the discard pile a little bit. Maybe it helps you against a red matchup or something like that. But what it also does is, with the Mastery, if you remove cards from their discard pile, you can instead have them mill 3. So you can reveal this card from your hand when entering combat and say, okay, I've got this, go ahead and mill 3 for me. That's pretty good. And we have 3 copies of Black Magic. Now this card is almost made for this deck. Combat, your opponent discards the top X cards of their life deck. X is your personality's PUR. So as we were talking about, we've got 4 on our level 3, we've got 6 on our level 4, 1 and 2 on the first 2, that's whatever, but we're going to be on these 3s and 4s incredibly fast. Being able to just set this down and say, go ahead and mill 6, mill 6, mill 6, that's 18 free damage off of those 3 cards if you get to pull them all off on level 4. That's awesome. It does everything we want this deck to do. That's it for the non-physical or energy section of the deck. We'll get into the physical attacks now. 2 copies of of Body Slam. Now this card works really well in this deck too. Physical attack doing +5 stages of damage. If successful for the remainder of combat, your opponent must discard a card from his hand. Before each physical attack they perform, you gain 4 stages. Again, we want to gain stages, that's good. But making your opponent discard a card each time they attack is also great, especially because that makes them mill cards. We have 2 black drop kicks. Focused physical, +3 stages. If successful, your opponent must discard until they have 2 cards in hand. Also good, or you can choose to make it mill your opponent. 3 black body destructions, needs no introduction, physical for 4, or stops an attack if you want it to. Discard a card from your opponent's hand, or have them mill cards, that's fine too. Black right kick, again, doesn't need an introduction. It's a villain's only card. We are a villain, that's fine. It's a decent physical attack. It has an empower if we want it to. Or they can discard a card from their hand, or we can make them mill. Black face slap. Again, this goes in every black discard deck. Focus physical for 2. If successful, choose a card at random from your opponent's hand and discard it. You can do that if you want, or you can make them discard cards. Swivel attack, your opponent has to remove from the game a card in their hand. If they only have Dragon Balls, they have to show you their hand. Now this doesn't trigger your mastery, but we are still a hand control deck, so this option is of course still a good one. 3 copies of Black Shift Kick. I like this card a lot. I don't see it played all that often, and there's probably something more interesting you can put here. I'm just a big fan of this card. It's a physical doing +4, which is good. Stops on energy, which is also good. And then you put the bottom 2 cards of your discard pile at the bottom of your deck. Just gives you a little bit of recovery, a little rejuvenation. Nothing wrong with that. Black D-Burst. Nothing has to be said about this. It's an attack that is a stop all. That's pretty good. And then I run 3 Black Draining Auras. It's physical for 3, and if you declare Tukuwaza, which we of course did, you gain 5 power stages. Not the most interesting attack in the world, but it's stages on a stick, which we want in this deck. That is it for physicals. In the energy section of the deck, we have 2 Black Dark Energy. It's an energy for 5 life cards. Then you can choose a number of cards in your hand, shuffle them into your deck, and draw the same amount of cards. This is another card that I don't see get a ton of use, and again, it's pretty, like, the results of it are random. Sometimes it's cool, sometimes it just draws you junk. But there's sometimes that you have this, you're holding 2 blocks in hand, your opponent has nothing left in their hand, and you'd much rather just hit them. Or vice versa, you know you need to not get hit as much this turn, so you'd like to put a couple attacks back and try to draw some blocks. Just give you some options. And an Endurance 1, and Endurance is Endurance. Black Energy Web, it's D-Burst but energy attack, we want that. Black Blasting Beam, this is an interesting card. Endurance 3, which is good, gives us a little more endurance in the deck. And if you declare Tukuwaza and you have 0 stages, this attack does +2 life and +2 stages. Again, not the most interesting attack in the world, but in a deck that loses stages as often as ours does, there are plenty of situations where you're going to throw this energy attack and it's going to move you from 2 to 0, and then it's going to be 6 life cards and 2 stages. Nothing wrong with that. And 3 endurance is 3 endurance. 3 Black Exertions. This card, of course, makes sense. We don't want our opponent using endurance. That's good. And 3 Black Turning Kicks. Energy for 5, or stops a physical. That's good. Raise our anger 1. That's also good. We want a level. It's a good black energy attack. It's ran a lot. Very common. And Black Chaos Debt. Of course, energy. Cost 3. If successful, your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. We want them to do that. We can either have them discard cards or we can make them mill. What do you know? A whole pile of cards that are exactly what we want to do with the Mastery. Who would have thought? And finally, getting into the defensive portion of the deck. You'll notice there's like a lot of cards here. I think it's 19 cards. I liked this deck to be pretty defensive in a lot of cases. We want to survive where we can. Losing stages as often as we do, we kind of have to cover our butts. And being a mill deck, we're sort of in it for the long haul. We want to hit when we can and mill where we can squeak it in. So of course we've got Vegeta's Physical Stance. No physical attacks against your MP, that's fine. 2 Pycon's Leg Catch. This one stops a physical, raise your MP to its highest power stage. You rejuvenate 3. Everyone knows Pycon Leg Catch. The only reason we don't run this at 3 is because we have this card at 4. Hirudegarn's Teleportation. Now this card is exclusive to Hirudegarn. It is an NZ4 card as well. It has Transform, so if you pitch a freestyle physical combat card, which we've got a couple of, you can play it from your discard pile. Also, Body Slams, freestyle physical combat card, so that works too. But stops physical or energy attack and raises you to your highest power stage. So it's like a leg catch without the rejuve and stops a little bit more types of attack. I don't know if this needs to be at 4, probably 2 or 3, really. But it's an NZ4 card, it's an NZ4 deck, so I really wanted it to be in there. I like it. I don't know if you actually need all 4 of them. I run 2 Black Wrist Blocks here, stops physical, or can stop a physical or energy instead. That's good. With the Mastery, that gains us an anger, which is awesome. Black Buffer Block stops either or, raises an anger, and lets us search a discard pile for a card that discards a card, or in this case, mills with the Mastery. That's good. Black Sidekick, stop a physical, raise your anger 2. This sometimes is enough to stop you from taking a bunch of damage, level you, and give you a whole bunch of stages back. That's great. We've got 2 copies of Black Recovery. Stop an energy. If you declare it a Tokuwaza, you can discard a card from your hand. If you do, your opponent discards a card from their hand. Sometimes, I only run this at 2. Discarding a card from your hand sucks. We don't draw a lot of cards, so that, we're never going to have like a huge hand of extra stuff to throw away. So I don't want to use this super often, but if we get to pull it off and we're in just the right moment, we can use this effect to basically stop an attack and then mill our opponent 3. That's pretty cool. And then the final card in the deck, 3 copies of Black Aura Eruption. This card is from NZ4. It has Transform, so you just need a black energy combat card, which we have plenty of within the deck. But stop a physical or energy attack. If you declare it a Tokuwaza, remove the bottom 5 cards of your opponent's discard pile from the game, and your main personality gains 5 power stages. So we've got a transformable Omni Block, which then raises us in anger because of our mastery. Also gets us some stages, which we want, and makes them remove cards in the discard pile, which we can also choose to have them mill instead. This card's awesome in almost every deck that it's in. Decks that have black energy cards to spare, this is pretty stable, I think. That's it. As you can see, there's a lot to keeping this guy satisfied, keeping him fed the stages he needs to not just eat huge attacks in the face. But if you can do that, you can really maximize the mill output that this deck has. And with as much black discard as we already get, this card is going to generate a lot of free damage through the mills anyway. And the versatility of being able to choose, do you want it to mill or do you want it to discard? Sometimes you want your opponent to just have less cards in their hand. Other times you don't care, they're out of cards, and you can just like mill, and you've got some options. That's it. I'm Deli here. Stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have some more deck profiles here as more people start digging into NZ4. I'd like to show off more of the decks here. One of the things I've kind of considered is going over the deck lists that are provided. We have to use that deck lists form when submitting and signing up for events. I think it'd be kind of fun to go over the, after an event's over, to kind of go over the list and top cut and just kind of talk about them. That might be something that Zach and James or I do in the near future. Who knows? There's a lot of things that we could do with the channel. For now, I just wanted to show off some NZ4 stuff that I've been enjoying, and hopefully you guys will find something really cool to do with NZ4 as well. See ya.